just an artist. I was born San Antonio, grew up there, and as far as art is concerned, I always remember that being just something that I was doing. Can't tell you when it started, but from I guess the earliest of memories I have, I've just always been drawing, always been scribbling. I laugh at that because when I was like fifth or sixth grade, we had tag names as, you know, I'm not even gonna say I was a street artist because I was in fifth and sixth grade, but I still had a tag name, and it was Scribbles, and so I throw it out here and there, still to this day, but yeah, I was always scribbling and always drawing, and it's funny. I went to see my folks a couple weeks ago, and my mom, for whatever reason, they're both retired. She's like, here, throws down a stack of a couple folders, and she's like, here's all your drawings from when we started keeping them, Yeah, so it was cool. It was cool to see, to go back, obviously, a bit of nostalgia and whatnot, and weird to really get flashbacks of like, I remember drawing that, like just a simple doodle, and I remember actually doing that. But the thing that I hadn't seen in all these years, because I had seen those drawings in and out over the years, right? The few things I hadn't seen were letters, and letters that I wrote. And I wrote maybe to my teacher, and then one to my dad, and like, I don't know who else, but man, I wish I would have remembered that. I guess I was 10. I would have been 9, 10, 11. Those were the main years in that stack. And it was, the letters were interesting because they talked about what I want to do, what I want to be, and they all mentioned an artist. I'm going to be an artist. My dad says he's going to put me in art school, so I'm going to do art. And in different ways and different variations, it was all that same message, either coming from me or coming to me. And it was cool. It was cool to see that because, man, this year and last year, I want to say, it's been probably my lowest producing of art that I've ever had, except for that few year stint back in Dallas when I was drinking really hard. But I have no excuse this time. But it's been hard, I think, in a sense of like, as a working artist, your ideas are always happening, and to not be able to even just make a shitty idea tangible gets to you, and it starts to build. And circumstances of life or whatever, it is what it is. It's not always going to be that way. It hasn't been. It's getting better. So I'm thankful for everything that I've gone through, that I'm been going through. But it was really, I think I needed that, seeing those letters. Yeah, I always knew it. People ask me, all the time when they meet me as a new artist, like, when did you start, or what was it that got you into this? And I was like, I always did it. As a kid, I always knew it. So I always knew it, but seeing those letters, I don't know, it just kind of, made my feet a little stronger in the ground, I guess, which is weird to say because that was 9-year-old me, But yeah, I don't know. I needed that.
That's pretty rad though, to just have those letters still there and just kind of like an affirmation, right, of like where you're at now as an artist, and just kind of like always kind of knowing instinctively that that's who you are going to become. Why do you feel like the last few years have been just a low point as far as like creating art?
Some of it is, just circumstances. You know, I don't. I'm careful with my words here because it's like I've been in tough situations before, and you make art happen no matter what, right? So why is art? Why has art not been happening as much? Um, to just give it to you straight, yeah, it's a lot of it is circumstance. A breakup, a new job, moving out. Um, those three things happening at once, big life events uh, happening all at once, and then just I guess finding my footing again in all of that has taken a little bit longer than I anticipated. I guess, you know, and I think that's it. Like,
I mean, that's fair though. Those are all big things that like are emotionally draining and they take a lot of the time that you spend thinking on something and then even during the day in your waking time like I got to do this, I got to do that, whatever the case may be. But they can also be very good catalyst from like a place to create from, right? Like if you need to work through some of those thoughts that are maybe just kind of lingering mentally, you can use those as like maybe not the whole entire reason why you're creating a new body of work, but at least like inspiration to be like, okay, you know, I'm going through these tough things right now and I can't carry this weight anymore. And I don't know if you're carrying this weight mentally, right? I'm just kind of like maybe projecting how I feel sometimes. And when I find my lulls and I'm not creating anything, I know like sometimes it's just like if I'm able to just create something, even if I like allocate one day out of the week, it's like, oh my goodness, I don't have to think about this anymore. It's gone. It's free.
yeah, that's true. Um, it's been weird. Yeah, it's been weird, but yeah, I don't know. I'm been thankful for you, especially just helping me get out of that. Honestly, I mean, I have, like you said, these things can be catalysts and markers in which you can step off of to create new work, and that is very true. But it's also people like you and galleries like this that are wanting working artists to show in their space, and it's like, oh, you want me? Cool. Okay, yeah, get to work. You know, and then all of that shit that's been really making me buffer is just halted, and it's like, no, you need this. Okay, and it's good because yeah, I don't know.
Those three pieces that you had in that group show, were those brand new? Did you work on those recently?
The most recent, those were brand new. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I remember you reaching out and saying, would you like to be a part of the group show, and you can show you know, you gave me the parameters to what to show and all that, and you added in there like it doesn't have to be any new work, you can show old work, and I was tempted, but people who know me know that if I have an opportunity to show work, I'm gonna make something new. If I haven't already, which you should always be making work that's new, um, in some space. But you know, just taking the opportunities that are given to you like that, where it's like, well, I could show old work, and I would be fine with it. I would have been fine with showing old work, but I don't know. There's just something like, hey, you got some art, you know, you want to show here? I was like, yeah, I have some art, but let me make something new for you, you know. And I don't know. That's how I get by, I guess. I don't know.
I appreciate that though, like, you know, not maybe taking the shortcut and just showing something that you've already had on the side and then you're like, you know what, I'm going to challenge myself to produce something new. And what's really rad about the work that you do is your attention to detail. I think, you know, that's one of the first things that I noticed when we first started working together is like you really care about everything. Like it's really prominent in your framing. just by like the way you do it, the way it's set up, how clean it is, how everything comes packaged really nicely. Like you start to see just like the subtle nuances of somebody who really cares about their art. And that was really, I think, one of the bigger reasons why, like outside of enjoying your work, I was like, oh no, like this person, they care, so I care for them. And yeah, that's always been really like the main driver as to like anytime we have a group show or an opportunity for you to show, it's like, yeah, hell yeah, like he cares about what he's doing and he's passionate about what he's doing. And if I can just be like a facilitator of that, then like, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome. I appreciate that. I've Yeah, it's good to hear. I remember a professor in college. There was an artist in our class, and he was, you know, I don't want to say too much, but he was a nice guy. He was great, um, and he just painted what he wanted to paint, and it was fun. Um, but his presentation was always lacking, and sometimes that's part of the thing. That's part of the concept. That's part of the piece. Like mangled presentation, whatever. But you know, these were simple square rectangular paintings that just were taken care of. But then when the framing came and when the presentation came, it was just very, you know, staple, 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 and then done. And I remember it was just me and my professor, and I don't know what we were doing, just going through, maybe we were cleaning or something, and then he pulled this one out and he was like, "Now, how do you expect to sell this for what it's worth when it looks like this?" And I was like, "Yeah, no, you're right. Like it kind of looks a little janky." Like so I don't know. I always cared, and then that moment I just like solidified, like, no, I gotta make this. If I'm gonna charge somebody $5,000, you know what I mean? Like when it comes down to it, I want them to have the best build, the best work that I can put out. And so, yeah, and you know, I've offered fellow artists the same attention to detail. Like, I don't go in and say, "Hey, you need to do this and you need to do that," but I'm here if you need help, you know. And I take that from other artists as well. You know, being open to being humbled every time you're involved with other people's work is how I just am, how I choose to be, I guess. Because it's helpful. It's there's so many different ways to do things. Everybody has learned something either on their own or from somebody else, and even regionally it's different over here on the West Coast than it is on the East Coast. And like, you just, if you're open to it, you build that, just that knowledge that you have, and it just betters everybody in the end. I think. But
No, I agree. One of the one of the better things to come out of like going to a school and training for like being an artist is like you have those moments of critiques where you learn how to accept critiques, and they're not coming from a negative place. They're coming from a place of like, if somebody could tell you, hey, this is how you can improve this, you learn to internalize that, and you're like, oh no, they're right. I can do this, this, and that. And I think sometimes what some artists miss out on is like that opportunity to take in critiques without being bothered or their feelings hurt or being rubbed the wrong way. Because yeah, sometimes it's, if it's somebody who you trust and you confide in and you're like, oh, that's a good artist, and they're just kind of like, not like, oh, that's wrong or this is bad or this is it, but it's like, hey, if I were you, I would probably try something like this or like that. Then maybe you should just kind of give them an ear, like give them a listen. Because yeah, you never want to go in and shit on anybody's work, but you are able to build up like a thicker skin when you go through like formal critiques and review processes for your work, and it makes you a better artist because you're like, oh, I see why, if you're open to taking in that information without being so defensive, I think maybe.
Most definitely. Um, I think it gets harder the older you get, the further away from college you get to even have those conversations. I would never go into somebody's studio and just start critiquing them. Like, I wouldn't want anybody to do that with me, and especially at this point in time. Like, um, but I have, um, shout out to Contra Common, a collective that I was a part of for a couple few years, and I really enjoyed my studio neighbors because we had an understanding, if the door's closed, we're locked in. If the door's open, come on in. We may be working, we can still chit chat, whatever. But the days where the doors were open and I would just holler to, shout out to Brock across the hall, hey, what do you think about this? You know? And Contra Common, I'm so thankful for that, because I hadn't had that in years, since college. I hadn't had that type of community. We talk about art community and being there for each other, and like supporting each other, and it's a beautiful thing. But to be able to be in the same vicinity with somebody, a fellow artist, and Brock moved out, and then Tobar, which I think you've already had on here, he moved in, and so it was him that I was going to, and like just going in there and being like, what are you working on? Like what, and then just asking each other, what do you think? And a lot of the times it was just quick. It was just like, oh yeah, love it. Looks great. But just having that available, I don't know. It's something else. And I think you're right about the critiquing part of it, because it just helps. It just helps. You get locked in. You get locked in, and artists like that, I guess, maybe. It's like a love-hate for me, but it's a lonely job. So, but you can lock yourself away for a long time and just work and focus on yourself, and you'll be fine. But I don't know. I kind of like having a neighbor.
No, absolutely. It goes a long way when you have somebody to bounce ideas with, like you said, or even just like,
Yeah.
I don't know, just small conversation that might inspire something else, or that might spark another thought, and then you're able to build on top of that. Because yeah, I've been guilty of just like disappearing for a year or two, and it's good in a sense, and then it's bad in a sense, because then it's like you kind of kill a lot of momentum. If you were already out in the mix with people, you kind of push off a lot of relationships, and it's never really really good, and it's never really really bad. You're just kind of in this weird like limbo space, is what I found, when you disappear for too long. And so
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's needed. I think we all need a little vacation, disappear here and there, but it's all about balance. It's just, I think it's key. But yeah, I miss it, and I think, to go back to your original question, another thing that has slowed my work down has been, I haven't had a studio, so no excuses. I did both these shows at your place without a studio, so you make work where you can make work, and I have. But it's been hard because I don't like working out of my bedroom or where I live. Like, I get too easily distracted, man, and I need a space, which I will get a space. I'm looking forward to it. I'll get my space back, and because it's not the days that, like, when you say, hey, there's a show coming up, would you do it? It's like, okay, I can work on that. I can work on that anywhere. it's the days where I don't really have anything to work on, or I'm not sure, or like I got too many ideas and I'm just kind of frozen. Those are the days where that space is important, I think, because what's most important to me in my whole career as an artist is playtime. Um, you know, I think as adults, we all, not all, but most of us, we don't lose playtime as we had when we were kids. We just call it something else. And for me, keeping that playtime in that studio space is crucial to keeping that production rate up, you know. Not for the sake of production, but just for the sake of good ideas that I'm in love with, that I'm happy with. So yeah, not having that space to be able to play is really handicapped me in a way, but it's not forever. So
But that makes sense. Like when you have a designated space where you know you can go and create and like maybe step away from like the outside world for a little bit and do your thing, like the energy's in that space for that reason. And so you're not having to like, yeah, working from home, like you're sharing that energy with everything that's going on in your home and you're still kind of attached to like the world in a way. And just being able to step outside of that and going somewhere and like, okay, this is why I'm here. I'm here for this reason, for this amount of time, and whatever is created or comes out of my time in that space, like it's for that purpose. And so that intentionality goes a long way, and it's super essential to have a space to call your own, whether it's temporary, long term, but just to step away and create.
yeah, yeah, being able to just step into that space, and then, like you said, it's away from the world that just, you know, your basic needs. You go to something that nobody needs art. It's all pointless. No, I'm just kidding. Anyways, I miss my dog for that reason. I know you didn't ask about her, but but she was really good at just like snapping you out of it, you know, like taking you out of all the world and everything. I don't know why the fuck I'm talking about her, but maybe it leads somewhere. But yeah, it was. I miss having a dog, like, because I could have the worst day of my life, and she'd be like, "Hey, I gotta go take a shit. Let's go outside," you know. And I'm like, "All right, let's do it," you know. And you go outside, and you step away from that, and you're in a different zone. Good day or a bad day, you know. You gotta make money, pay bills on a good day or a bad day. So, but to be able to step away from those thoughts that are just, they're gonna be there no matter what. It's helpful. And so a dog is like a studio. No. Anyways, yeah.
Oh, but I get what you're saying. Like I got my dog, like I've had her for 14 years, and so like yeah, no, it's like some days when it's just tough, or you're just like drained from everything. Like I'll just go pick her up and sit on the couch for 15 minutes, and it's like all that shit just melts away for a little bit, and then you put her down, and it's like all right, back to the regular world. But it's like you borrow a little bit of energy from her, like to pick you up, and you're like, thanks, dog.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you have no idea.
Yeah, no, so I can totally empathize with like that whole kind of like process of going through those emotions and like taking that in, and it's needed. So I feel you, man. It's it's needed, I think, is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
So outside of like, you know, looking for a space, have you been in conversations with finding a new spot, or how's that process?
Yeah. I just asked a fellow artist. She got a nice little space at Canopy, and I said, next, I think open Canopy is this Saturday. Anyways, the next one I'm gonna go and kind of snoop around again and see what they got. So Yeah, yeah.
It's good. It's
But
usually the
there's
first Saturday of like the month, right?
yes, yes. I believe it's this weekend. But there's a couple other options. Um, Contra Common was great. I would have stayed, but they have a mission. They take in um, emerging artists, and just kind of help them, kind of like, is this your first studio? Yes, beautiful. Come on in. Let's help you kind of get your shit rolling, as an artist. And so they're beautiful for that. But I had hit my 3-year stint, and I could have stayed. Nobody was pushing me out, but to kind of help them achieve what they're trying to achieve, it's like, I'm gonna step away, open my space to someone else, a younger artist or whatnot, and let them have their time there, and then just keep the rotation going, and we move on to bigger and more beautiful things. So
Well, it forces you to grow, right? Like you're leaving that space of comfort and you're kind of like, okay, well, what's next? And then you got to step into this uncomfortable zone, which is where most growth ends up happening. So like even if it's, a lull now, like I'm sure it's going to pick back up because the pendulum's going to swing both ways. And so now kind of, yeah, you're the catalyst now to make sure that you get set up. And I think, let's say it does work out over at Canopy, like that's awesome. That's a great spot. They have a lot of good things going on all the time. And maybe that was the next step that needed to happen. And I think even just you consciously leaving that space so that you can make room for others. I mean, I feel like the universe is going to reward that. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's not going to be forgotten because you could have been selfish and you're like, you know what, I'm just going to stay here until somebody says I got to go because this is what I need. And instead, you took a more empathetic approach. I feel like to be like, okay, I've done 3 years here. I've done maybe not as much as I could do here, but I feel good about what I've done here, and it's time to open the door for somebody else. And I'm gonna go step through another door and see where that takes me. And so, I think that's powerful in itself.
thanks. Yeah, I felt like I did while I was there. I fulfilled my time. Yeah, I felt good. I felt good the whole time I was there, and I felt good leaving. And yeah, I feel good about the future.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, I think that's the most important thing is just like to keep that momentum going, right? Like, you're gonna have to be that driver of that momentum. And so, I think being aware of like what's gonna help you be successful in those spaces and what's not is step one, and then from there it's you deciding everything else, right? So I'm excited to see what you continue to produce because I love your work. I'm a fan of your work. I'm glad. Shout out to Sandra for introducing us because that was awesome. Like every piece you've bought in, there's something special to it, and again, your attention to detail or like the little things that you hide here and there within the design itself, which may be apparent, sometimes may not be apparent, but again, it's all very intentional from what I've seen, and I can really appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for saying that. Yeah, I am intentional. I try to be at least, with every mark making, yeah, I don't know. It's nice to hear that. But I knew you would see that. You have a great eye for art. Now, and I like to keep the humor aspect of my work. I don't like to take it too seriously. I take it seriously enough, that I gotta leave some lighthearted stuff, here and there. But yeah, I just have fun with it, man. I just enjoy it, and I enjoy the people that I get to meet, and all the artists I got to meet in person. Coming to your gallery. That's always a cool thing when, because it's the community of artists supporting artists, and I think this town is really good with that. It's like, yeah, I want to see all my artist friends succeed. We all have different work. We all have different audiences. There's no reason to be butting heads or being jealous or saying, this guy's copying this guy and that, you know, it's like, well, if you're making work and you want to make it with making work, like, more power to you. I'm here to support you. I hope you do it. I hope everybody, you know, the group shows, I'm like, man, I hope everybody sells a piece, because there's enough room for everybody. It can work. And yeah, I don't know. If a buyer comes in, looks at my piece, I like it, but then buys somebody else's piece, it's like, awesome. You know, that was that audience, that was that person's piece, you know, before they walked in, that belonged to them. And so I don't know, I've been enjoying that aspect of being an artist, most definitely.
Well, I think you said it right. I think the community that we have here, even in San Antonio, I feel like it's kind of like merging the more and more, like they continue to build in between. It's turning into this almost like larger metroplex. But um, everybody does support each other. Everybody's excited to see their homies out there doing great work and just producing and creating. And I have yet to find somebody who's like just a naysayer or like negative about anything. Fortunately, everybody's been just very uplifting and optimistic about everybody's work and what's going on. And I think maybe that negativity starts to kind of like brew when the individual themselves isn't creating to create. Does that make sense? Like they're creating to compete. And that's when it gets kind of weird, because so far, like everybody I've met is creating because they're just creators. They want to create. They see something in their head that needs to get out. They're feeling a certain way that needs to be released. It's like, it's not, oh, I'm going to go be better than this person. Like, what?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's immaturity in the simplest form. I mean, you know. I remember a college class I took, and it was a drawing class. One of the best professors I ever had. And the end of the semester, like, people there were just drawing so well, and it just pushed everybody to draw at their best. And it was a great semester. Like, I can't think of another college semester where I was like, man, that was fun. You know, like, for some reason, everybody just vibed. We all got along. Professor was great. You know, it was good. It was good memories in the making. And so, but there was this one girl in there, and as far as quality, it was, you know, because we would get critiqued and graded, and I would say, her and I would be like this, you know. At the end of the semester, she's like, hey, it was really fun drawing with you, man, you're good. And I'm just like, we're just like complimenting each other back and forth, you know, ping pong, like, no, you're good, you know. And I was like, yeah, it was good competition. And then I left, and as I was walking out the door, I was like, why did I say that? Like, did I feel? And I was like, I took myself back for a second, because I was like, I guess there was a bit of a competitiveness there for me. But after I said it, it felt wrong. It felt really wrong. And I was like, no, like, and it was too awkward for me to go back and be like, hey, I didn't mean to say that. I know you were, I know you were just complimenting me, and you were just being a kind person, and I came over here. I don't know if it was just her and the professor. I don't know if they even thought twice about it. Maybe they said something when I left. I have no idea. But for myself, I was like, I don't ever want to be in that mental state again. Like, it was fun. If I'm being completely honest, I was competing certain days. I wanted to be better. Which is a weird, it's a weird thing, right? Because well, here's the difference. Like, I wanted to be better in that moment than anyone else there. And after that day, I had to reevaluate and reimagine what that meant. Uh, and what it evolved to was, I want to be the best version of myself. I want to be the best Alex in my studio. And that is way healthier than, saying I want to be better than so and so and this and that. But yeah, I was just like, man, don't ever say that again. Like, unless, I know there are art events out there that are like, we're going to compete and, prize.
But that's different. That's
Yeah.
like you're going for that purpose to,
Set up
yeah.
like that. Yeah.
I think just having the emotional awareness to be like, oh, that statement didn't sit right with me. I wonder why.
Yeah.
And then reflecting on it and understanding, like, okay, this is why. And then moving from a way that's more internal as opposed to external is, again, something else that's super powerful. But I think, like you mentioned, like, even just being young and in college, like, we're already set up in a way where it's like everything's in a competition for the most part, like in America. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're all kind of built to compete, whether it's for job security or for sports or you name it. Like, that's kind of how we're created initially. And then it's up to us to kind of break away from those norms and then like operate from a different place. So I think what a pivotal moment to have at such an early age. I feel like to be like, I wasn't really like, I get it. Like, that's how I felt in college too. Like, it's like, oh, I want to be better than my peers. But I think it stems more from like a sense of needing to be acknowledged, at least for me personally. Like, I wanted to be acknowledged as somebody who was, a great creator, designer, whatever the case may be. And I think that's maybe where mine stems from. But once you kind of realize where it stems from, you can be like, oh, no, man, everybody's great. Their work is fantastic. Their work is fantastic. And you just choose to move differently. So kudos to you to be able to identify that so early on.
I don't know how, but it happened. I don't know how. Yeah. I was like, all right, on to the next one, Do better next time. And yeah, that's crazy.
But it's always interesting to see, like, and to reflect on those moments, because I from me knowing you now, like, I don't feel like you operate from that standpoint. Like, if anything, you're just kind of always like, oh, that's awesome, that's great, like, nothing but kind words and positive things to say about any artist whom we're talking about at any point in time. And so I think, yeah, I don't know, that's important. It needed to happen. You needed to say those things then so that you could operate from a different place moving forward.
Yeah, it's easy. I think it's easy to sit back and critique, and I will do it from time to time, but not out loud, maybe, and not harshly. Just to keep things fresh, to keep your mind sharp as far as what art is constantly evolving, and so I think it's important to critiquing something as a spectrum. It's like, um, but yeah, somewhere in the middle where it's healthy and beneficial to you, and not intentionally trying to hurt somebody or cut somebody down. It's what's most important. And then, if someone's skills are in the beginning stages and whatnot, it's like, well, they're trying, they're making work. Sometimes at certain points in my life, it's like they're making more work than I am. Like, I can't sit here and bash them for anything. So it's just really kind of looking at people for who they are as individual artists, and finding a way to support them, I think, is it's just healthier for everyone. It's better for everyone. Yeah.
Well, you said it well, right? Like, it's if they're just starting out, like, maybe they're not going to have the technical skill set of somebody who's been in it for 15, 20 plus years, and you don't want to discourage them from continuing to create. So it's always super like important to be selective with your words and how you choose to critique them, and just how understanding how open they're going to be to receive whatever feedback you're going to give them. Because sometimes, again, somebody might be just still heavily guarded and they're not going to receive your feedback very well, no matter how you phrase it. They're going to just be like, oh, I'm XYZ now, or I don't feel a certain way, or whatever the case may be. And so it's always challenging. I think, I don't know, I think it's good to have critiques. I think it's good to have like formal critiques with your peers whom you trust and respect. Like even at this day and age, like I think, if somebody's like, hey, let's have a critique night where everybody brings in 2 to 3 pieces and you all know that you're going there for that reason and you're going to talk about your work in a certain way and it's going to be okay, and you're going to share your thoughts on somebody's work and be like, hey, like if you just cleaned up a little bit of your framing here, this entire piece would maybe be perceived as higher value to somebody else who doesn't understand everything that goes on in this spectrum. you know
Yeah, man, community is important. It's I know it's art community is like those words are just kind of like, you know, they're light to the wind and, they just carry away real fast, but it's that is also the art community is also a spectrum, and just, I encourage anybody to just go out and try. I mentioned being a part of Contra Common. They do critique night. They do drink and draw night, and there's so many other collectives that do the same thing, and just maybe collectives that don't have a building, a roof to. But the community is large, and just going out and trying different events or different nights or different just whatever you can get your foot in the door with, and basically finding your group, because as large as the Austin art community is, and we all, like, I see people here and there, and they're still like, I don't know, it's one big group and then little groups that just kind of mesh in and out. They kind of hover over here, hover over there. Maybe that's just my perspective. But I think there's something for everyone,
Oh yeah, for sure. Here in Austin, and again, like I said, that San Antonio area, that's just becoming even larger and growing.
Yeah,
like
San Antonio, man. Yeah, I'm itching to go back. That's where I was born, and anyways.
No, yeah, I mean it's flourishing. It reminds me, the energy there reminds me a lot of the energy here about 8 to 10 years ago. There's a lot of just like things happening. There's a lot of people trying, and there's a lot of creativity, and there's a lot of expression, and there's a lot of good food and art and alcohol and little restaurants that are popping up, and very just like niche and like hip places. And it's kind of like I don't know, it's like a breath of fresh air, right? Like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with our community. Like, we have a ton of great things going on, but it feels almost a little bit more established here, like in certain places. And over there, it's still kind of like the Wild West, where like you can kind of get away with, a lot. But it's fun. That's where innovation starts. That's where creativity is like sparked in. Just like there's no set way of doing things. Everybody's still kind of figuring out what is best, and that's where, like, I don't know, pure creativity comes from, in my opinion. It's just like the sense of trying, like you said, and just doing, and that's it.
Just jumping in and being like, yeah, I'll help you, and then, yeah, it's great. I love that.
How long ago did you move to Austin?
Man, I'm so bad with time. Years, I don't know what happened in whatever years. I am so bad with time, dude.
No, that's all right. No worries.
This is my 3rd time here. I would say lived here a total maybe over 10 years. 10 years? Okay. I mean, somewhere around a decade. But gosh, well, now I'm stuck just trying to figure it out. See?
We'll just say 10 years. Somewhere in between 10 years.
Yeah, so I lived in San Marcos, moved to Dallas, moved to Austin, moved to San Antonio, moved to Dallas, moved back to Austin. So I was just kind of like bouncing around Texas. So this is my third time in Austin and my longest time that I've stayed. And I'm like, okay, I gotta put my feet down somewhere for a little bit longer than a year or two, and really just kind of dive in, and like we've been mentioning this whole time, like with the art community, just like find something solid, so, more solid connections rather than just knowing somebody that you did a show with, and so that was, I was okay settling here. I'm still okay settling here for a while, and really just kind of building up my support system, and I don't know, focusing on my career. Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like building that tribe, right? And just going from there and just letting that evolve into whatever it's going to choose to evolve into. That's pretty rad. Well, because that's kind of how it goes. Like you have to put yourself out there in order to find your people.
Yeah. And yeah, I would say as artists, it's hard to do for a lot of us, I think for the longest time, like it's just easy to do your work and stay with the people, your friends that you've always known, and I don't know. I think I can't speak for anybody, but I would think with social media, it's made artists become a little bit more comfortable with stepping out, you know. I don't even remember. I had a moment in time where I didn't have social media and I was making art, but it was just going to shows, I think. But because of social media, you post your art, you can see other people posting art, and you can see a small event that you never would have heard about, and so it's just, so then you go to that small event and you recognize that artist that posted that, and it's like, yeah, I like your work, I follow you, and it just makes those little steps easier than, I don't know. I'd be curious to see the amount of artists that are introverted, heavily introverted versus extroverted, because there are plenty of artists that are extroverted, My mind wants to tell me that most artists are introverted and they don't really, that's not really their thing. Go out, shake hands, meet people, and do that. But I think it's become a little bit easier, I want to say. If it's helped me, I'm sure it's helped somebody else, just getting out there. And because that was my thing in college. Was I started off as a business major. I don't know why. I was just like, I graduated high school and my dad, it was towards the end of the summer, and my dad was like, so are you going to get a job or are you going to go to school? I was like, oh, I guess I'll go to school. I don't know. So I went to school and I was like, well, why am I going to school? That's just what you do. I'll be a business major. I'll go into advertising, I don't know. I want to make funny commercials or something, or do advertisement, graphic design or something. And that lasted less than a semester, I want to say. And then I did the art career. I did all that schooling for art, only to realize at the end of it was like, art is business. Cool. Maybe I should have stuck out a couple business classes, just to help me along the way, which is like, as artists, I want to say we struggle with that part of being an artist. You can't just make the work, you got to sell it too, if that's what you want to do. And so having some, I don't know, help in that realm, either you get it through school or you get it through someone else, or, maybe you're a master YouTube class taker and you do it on your own. But I think for the most part, nobody makes it on their own. So being able to meet people, not necessarily who are running businesses, but are a little more savvy on that edge, and then being able to help you grow as an artist, other than just making your work, and that takes getting out there and going to shows, going to events, going to talks, like, and introducing yourself to people, which I think is the hardest part. Anybody can go to an event and have a good time, but really making those connections. Sometimes when you take that step, those connections will come to you. People will come to you and introduce themselves. And I've met plenty of people like that. But other times you just got to do it. You just got to do it yourself. And I don't know. There's plenty of stuff happening around town to make it happen.
Yeah. But you're right. It is a challenge. Like, I can find myself within that spectrum of like being more complacent, just being at home, and just kind of like only mingling like with my friends, or like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's a challenge where you're like, okay, I'm gonna go to this show, because sometimes then you don't, I don't know, like then you feel conflicted because you're like, oh, I'm only going to this show with like an agenda or something, or whatever the case may be, and then it's all this internal dialogue that you have with yourself, which is like, I don't know, it makes it bigger. So I think the biggest thing is like going and just being open to whatever happens, and knowing like, okay, I'm going to do my best to meet people, but not because I need something from them, but because I want to meet somebody. I want to talk with somebody about the things that we have a common interest in, that we're both passionate about. Like, going into the shows here, it's like, okay, I'm going to go and talk about the art that I'm a fan of, or support my homie that's having a show. And if there's an overlap there and I meet somebody, then cool, we'll hit it off and talk about their work and my work and other work, and letting that evolve naturally. Because yeah, like if you go, I don't know if it's just weird. Like, I've had people just go to places where they're going with this intent and it doesn't work out in their favor, and then they're like, well, I'm not doing that again. And it's like, well, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot.
No, you're right. Being open is key. And I think I guess when I'm talking the way that I was, it's more along the lines of like artists who are afraid to get out there, or who are just beginning. Because you're absolutely right. Just being open and being able to go to a show solely to just enjoy the show is also important. It's and meeting people, just like you said, is it's not always going to turn into something. You may never even see that person again, and they may be an artist in town, like. But it's just nice to do that. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just letting I don't know, it's just letting it evolve how it's going to evolve, I think, is the biggest thing, right? Like, you have taken the first step if you're like comfortable being at home and you're like, okay, I'm going to go put myself out there, and then just be open to whatever that experience turns into. I think like that's really it. Like, you've placed yourself in a setting where you know that you share a similar interest with someone, and you just let it go from there. And that's like, yeah, that's the best advice for anybody who's just starting off, I feel like, who's like, oh, I want to be a part of this community, or I want to get to know more people, or I want to, whatever the case may be. It's like, just show up and participate, I think, is the word.
Most definitely. Yeah, because there have been times I've gone to shows and I don't even know if anybody knew I was there. Not that everybody knows who I am. I don't know a large majority of artists out there in this city that I want to meet. But I say that, in that way because I'm like, I go in sort of like a ninja, like I'm like, I'm like in and out, and sometimes that's all I.
No, it's crazy. We share some of the similar tendencies, I feel like, because I'm the same way. Like, I'll go in and I'll look at all the work and I'll take it in, and then I'm like, cool.
Yeah. Didn't say a word to anybody. Yeah. Didn't even grab a free water, like.
Oh, I have to get a water because I almost have like anxiety just standing there with my finger in my hand. So that little whatever of my hand just like this.
Yep.
Yeah, then I just deal with whatever sorts of anxiety. But no, man, I totally get what you're putting down.
That hand thing is real, man. Like, in social situations, having something in your hand, it's, I don't know what it does something. It's real. It's like I did a drawing, a stupid drawing. I don't know where, whatever. I'll say it anyways. It's stupid. There's a person smoking a cigarette. It's like, why are you smoking? It's like, well, I can't masturbate in public. Like, you know, I just, you gotta have something to do. I was talking about the production thing like that, like I was, because it halted me for a while. Like, just thinking about it and talking to you about it, it really kind of fucked with me more than I realized. Because in my young artistic brain, I was like, I did not want to, I didn't become an artist so that I could just produce endlessly for a specific audience, which I could see myself losing myself before it even happened. And I think it is, like we talked about before, just whole social media aspect of it all is great. I've sold work off of social media. Other people have done the same. It's nothing new. So it's awesome for artists because we didn't used to be able to do that, you know. So there are pros and cons to it all, but that specifically, I would see it tied into social media, and I would see artists that were doing really well basically becoming a brand. And I was like, I didn't become an artist to become a brand. Like, for me. Like, and so it halted me more than I realized, as far as it halted me in a way of like, I fought the idea and then I gave in to the idea and then I fought it. I backed out. I gave in. I backed out. You know, I made shirts. I made stickers. I made this and that, which I would have done anyways because it's fun, and I'll still do it to this day. But starting to do it and then starting to think like, okay, how many shirts do I need to sell? How many shirts do I need for this market? And if I'm going to post them on my shop, on my online shop, like what other graphics can I make so that it makes a, you know, and then how do I make it to where I put my stamp on it, you know, and it just started becoming something further away from where I started from, what I love. And so it was just constant push and pull, and I fought, you know, I talked about this, what year is it? 4 years ago. um, it's the same thing within the gallery system. I'm stupidly rebellious, and like I just don't want to do it. I don't want to do what makes sense, what you're telling me to do. I don't want to do it, and it has slowed me down, and it has taught me a lot of lessons along the way. Of maybe it's not so bad, you know. Maybe you need to come at it at a different angle. And so, but I was stubborn. I still am stubborn, but I was really stubborn, and I was really rebellious to the idea of anything that, you know, I didn't think was cool, I guess. And so making it, I don't know, it tied into making work that looked the same outside of social media, outside of the push, outside of what everybody was saying. I was like, well, that's the same thing for galleries. It's been the same thing for galleries. It's you know, galleries want to see your body of work, something that's cohesive, something that's going to look nice on their walls, and something that's going to be recognizable, so that when somebody comes in, they say, I know that artist, and there's another piece from that artist, you know. And it makes sense, you know, it makes sense. I've given this example before, whereas, you know, Metallica, I'll just, since they're right there in the studio with us, um, if they came out with the jazz album, the next album they dropped, some of us would be like, okay, interesting, I'm going to listen to it. Maybe I'll enjoy it. And other people are going to be like, what the fuck are you doing? This is not why I'm a fan, you know. I'm not a fan for you to go off and experiment totally different and, you know, do that on your own side stuff. And I kind of felt that way as an artist, and this all ties into each other of man, if I start becoming something that's somewhat of a product, am I ever going to be able to, not am I ever going to be able to, because people do it all the time, but how often am I going to be able to do that and galleries take me seriously, or audiences continue to buy my stuff, you know? And it just ate into all these thoughts, and it really just kind of stunted me along the way, where I finally said, fuck it, I'm just going to make whatever I want to make. Contra Common was kind enough to let me do it at their space, and so I had a show that was specifically revolved around the idea that this is anti-themed. Nothing in here is a sibling to anything else. Everything is it's on its own. Maybe there's some similarities here and there, but these are all individual pieces, and it's all one show by one artist. And I just I was determined to do that, to be like, fuck your rules. I'm just gonna do what I want. And it's not even that like revolutionary or anything, but for me internally it was kind of like a, I need to do this, you know. I need to get this out and see what happens. And what happened was I saw the importance of the cohesiveness. I saw the importance of the theme. For someone stubborn like me, it took that. Whereas somebody else would just be like, oh no, I get it. I see it. You know, I understand just by reading a little bit. But for me, I had to go through that whole, you know, however many years of just fighting and struggling and then putting on a show that I mean, people said to my face that they liked the show. No, but I was happy with it. But I definitely learned the importance of it, and so it was just kind of like a reset for me. And then I said, okay, so if I can appreciate and take in this idea of me making similar work over and over and over again, and that being okay, like what does that look like for me, you know? Because I fought it for so long. I would just make random shit, and I tried to make it the best that I could make it, but it would at times take a really long time to finish a piece, way longer than I ever should have. Or at the end of it, I was just kind of like, how do I present this? You know, just very confused with what I've created. And then my dog died. And around that time, I had that show, I had that clarity. The next painting I made, I was thinking about my dog that had just died, and I made that piece, and then I drew 4 eyes and a smiley face, and then didn't think twice about it. Made a couple other paintings. I do a lot of mark making in my work, just spontaneous mark making. I'm looking around and I say, do it again. 4 eyes and a smiley. And before I knew it, I was just throwing that in. It felt consistent. And I then realized this is all I need. This is all. I just need one little 4-eyed smiley face that I can add here and there. One of the shows you invited me to, I made it the forefront of that show. That was the first time I had pushed it to the forefront, made it about that. It felt good. I forever grateful that that moment in time came and you offered that to me, because it felt solid. I feel grounded now, and I feel that I can achieve that repetition, which I fought so hard, which I hated so hard. You know, in school, I've told this story numerous times, but in high school, I would come home and my mom would say, "How was your day at school?" And I'd say, "Mom, I don't want to repeat myself. Dad's about to get home in like an hour. He's going to ask me the same thing. Can I just," like, literally, I was, what an asshole, but like, I was just like, I just hate repeating myself. I hate it. And so I fought that for so long, and then just as simple, as silly as a smiley face to help me become grounded. I don't know. It was revolutionary within myself.
Yeah. But that's important. I feel like sometimes you have to go through those things, because I think maybe it just stemmed from like, then it just didn't feel unique if you were just doing the same thing over and over again without like any real like thought about it. If you're just like producing for the sake of producing, like, how unique is this piece? How unique am I? How unique is my work? How unique is my aesthetic, my style? And so to be able to exercise that contradiction and saying, you know what, everything's going to be unique, fuck it, and getting that out and doing that body of work like that, and then being like, well, okay, here's what I learned from this. I went through this experience. I can take this all in. And then going through another experience, and then finally finding your way to what's become your motif. It has to happen that way, you know? Like, it had to happen that way. Like, that just has to be part of your journey to get to where you need to be. Because maybe if you just accept that everything has to look the same way right out of the gate, you don't get to this motif that's unique and special to you, and that you can then, with pride, stamp when necessary on the bodies of work that you create, right? It's so important to you that it sits on your arm now. And so it had to be that way, you know. There's no other way around it. Like, it just had to be that way for you to get to where you needed to get to. And I think that's what's important. Like, you know, I had to shoot all the things that I had to shoot to realize that that's not where I needed to be or how I wanted to operate. And it's part of our evolution as like creators to just go through these things sometimes, for better or worse, to really get to where we need to be. And I think again, you just being aware and reflecting and taking in, you know, what you took in to understand how you got to that point and why you were the way you were. It's like, that's all part of the journey. That's all part of that beautiful process that we get to experience and live through.
Most definitely. It is a journey for sure. You're right. It's nothing less of a journey, because it's just different people and are on different timelines too, you know, and there's no right or wrong moment to which you discover that. It's but yeah, you just talking about that uniqueness that you were talking about. I don't know at what point in time I started to ask myself, during my pieces taking a step back and being like, is this me? You know? And I'm positive I heard that from an older artist, maybe in a YouTube interview or something. You know, I didn't come up with that myself. Rarely do I come up with anything that I'm talking about myself. But that's part of sharing, you know. But it helped. It helped early on where I was like, is this me? You know? And sometimes it wasn't me. And it was somebody else. And it was influences that I allow influences from everywhere. I want them. But if you're not careful, they'll overtake you. And yeah, so it's helped in that, keeping that uniqueness, I guess, like you said. But yeah, man, I think it's so important. And as far as the way that I work, you know, dealing with all of that came about the planning aspect of the work. Whereas because I didn't care so much, I wouldn't plan my work. I just wanted everything to be so unique. And it was, but it took, you know, I don't even want to say how long to finish a single painting. So it's just an evolution and growth. And if whatever I'm saying can help somebody just like kind of snap out of something that they're stuck in, beautiful, you know, because I definitely took a long time to figure some of this shit out. And it's like I plan way more now than I ever used to. I plan it out. I'll draw it up. I'll be like, okay, this is the meat of the idea. Leave like 10-15%. I have to have that window of spontaneity for myself. I can't plan everything. There's some saying like paraphrased, basically having everything planned out is hell, you know. If anybody knows, the real saying is way more beautiful than that. But you know, I don't know. That speaks to me, at least in my work. But yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it makes sense. I think those intangible moments in between of like all the planning is kind of where like the secret is, the authenticity is, right? Like I used to get so frustrated when that camera would just shut off. And then I was just like, you know what? If that's what it's going to be, then I'm going to lean into the fact that that happens. And what I've now since discovered, since it's starting to happen and me being okay with that happening, is that those conversations are just really beautiful. Like it's where I've noticed that whomever I'm talking to, and myself included, we get to just be very just like vulnerable and authentic. And it's almost like all this stuff that's in here for production's sake just kind of like fades away. And we're just talking and we're just sharing and we're just connecting. And I was like, okay, well, if that's what that needed to be, then I'm not going to fight it. I'm just going to go with it. And so, yeah, it's like, to your credit, I think it's nice that, yeah, you have a plan and an idea and, you know, here's kind of what it needs to be. But then in the moment to just be like, well, you know what? It's going to be this now. That's life. You know, that's life at its purest. Like we can plan all we want and it can be going according to plan, but at some point some shit's going to happen that's going to throw you off or is going to change the direction, and you got to change with it. The more you fight it, the harder it is for you, the stressful it is for you, the more it weighs on you. And maybe this is just me projecting how I feel about things, but it's just like if you just go and lean with it and you're open to what it turned into, you'll maybe find that it's like, oh, it wasn't that bad. It was actually better than what I thought it was going to be. This is actually pretty rad. Like, I'm glad. And so, yeah, it's a tough journey to get to being okay with just random shit happening sometimes, and you know, or forcing the random things, or just, I don't know, it's a tough place to be okay with the things that happen sometimes. But if you just learn to let go of whatever it is that you were holding on to so tightly and just accept what is probably coming your way or is happening at that moment, then sometimes it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, um, plans can't keep up with change, you know, and that's a saying that I know. I think. I'll Google it after this and then come back and say it the right way.
I'm just gonna have a description of just like, this is what the actual quote was. This is what the actual quote was.
Pop up on the screen.
What he really meant was. No, I would never.
I'm totally fine with that. I think that's hilarious.
No, it's gonna. If somebody wants to really know what you were trying to say, then they'll go and Google it, and they'll be inspired that much more because they had to go on a quest to find it. But yeah, no, I think I would love to have you do a solo show. We have October open. I think you would crush it. I just, yeah, I'd love to see what you do, just knowing like that you have that much time to like decide what you want to do, and just letting you just, for the sake of creation, create. Because again, I dig your work. So as a fan, purely speaking, as a fan of your work, like it's gonna be sick to see what you do just by yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, man. Of course, I'd be honored. You know. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Time to get to work.
It's gonna be sick. I'm excited because like I just, the technical skill set is there. There's no lack of intention in your work, and so now that you have that much time to like decide, almost like a full year, right, to decide like what you want to create, what narrative you want to share, like what it is that it's gonna be to you. That's like,
Yeah. Yeah. I am too. Yeah, for sure. Because I've got a list. I'm going to just attack it. And then, yeah, it'll be fun.
yeah, I'm excited. I can't wait to see like what you produce. You're a great artist, man, and so I'm excited to see what you produce. Yeah. So I guess final send-offs. What do you want to tell the people, man? What's one last thing you want to leave them with? What should they know?
What? What? Plans can't keep up with change, man. That's it. Just go forth and plan a little bit more, but not too much, you know. Yeah. Change is gonna happen.